The conservatives' war on same-sex marriage, if you thought it was just done, well, you're dead wrong about that. Do you recall the Supreme Court decision, Obergefell versus Hodges? It's when the Supreme Court said that same-sex marriages are basically allowed to happen. And that was in 2015. So that's more than, 10 years ago now that we've been looking at that decision. And of course, nothing is sacred with this particular Supreme Court, and nothing is guaranteed with this particular Supreme Court. So that's why we're talking about a recent petition for writ of certiorari that was filed by Kim Davis. She was the Kentucky clerk who was jailed because she refused to issue a gay couple a marriage license. And she went to jail for, let me check here, 6 days. 6 days she went to jail in 2015. She refused to issue a marriage license to a gay couple. The grounds, she says, my religious beliefs prohibit me from doing so. Kim Davis says that her case has always been a case about religious liberty, and specifically, she's asking the United States Supreme Court to take up her appeal. Now, if you're asking yourself, wait, hold a second, hasn't she actually appealed this already? Well, you're right. She actually appealed years ago her ability to be able to deny those marriage licenses. This is back in 2019. Davis went to the United States Supreme Court and she asked to have the lawsuit that was brought against her to have it tossed out because there was a lawsuit, as we know, brought. But back then, her petition, meaning her asking of the Supreme Court to take this case, that was rejected. Both Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito back in 2019 agreed with the decision at the time not to take up her appeal. So fast forward, we are now in 2025, and since that moment in time, Kim Davis not only went to trial and was found liable for approximately $100,000 by a jury for emotional damages, but she's also on the hook for $260,000 in attorney's fees and costs. And instead of taking accountability, because for Republicans, accountability is a dirty word, instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to own up to the fact that I did something wrong, she is trying to fight having to pay those damages. She claims that the United States Constitution's First Amendment, its free exercise of a religion, immunizes her, protects her for any type of personal liability when she denied the issuance of those marriage licenses. She's asking the Supreme Court to take up her case right now. We won't know for a little while whether or not the Supreme Court will do it, but I wanted to highlight for you one of the questions that she is saying should be presented to the Supreme Court for its consideration. She offers up 3, but there's one specifically I want to focus on for today's video. Quote, whether Obergefell versus Hodges from 2015 and the legal fiction of substantive due process should be overturned, end quote. She's claiming that the United States Supreme Court in 2015 and Obergefell made a mistake. She actually says they got it egregiously wrong when they said that there were marriage rights for same-sex couples under the 14th Amendment's due process protections. Her attorney, Matthew Staver, writes in her petition, the mistake, that being Obergefell, it must be corrected, he says. He then goes on to say that Justice Anthony Kennedy's majority opinion in that Supreme Court decision is, quote, legal fiction. I want to take a minute here because I want you to consider the presentation of the issues that is being made by Kim Davis at this time. Kim Davis is asking the United States Supreme Court to say that a same-sex marriage isn't real, that it doesn't have any substance, that same-sex marriage doesn't have the same legal protections as one between a man and a woman. And if you don't think that that's insulting in and of itself, not only to the rights of gay people, then you're also sending the message, if you don't believe in the legality of that Supreme Court decision, Obergefell, you're sending the message that you don't believe that gay people have value. Because essentially that's what we're doing here with Kim Davis asking for the Supreme Court to overturn is precedent. Back in 2015, when Obergefell was decided, 35 states had statutory or constitutional bans on same-sex marriages, and only 8 states had actually enacted laws that explicitly allowed the union of same-sex marriages. So far, fast forward to 2025, at least 9 states have either introduced legislation aimed at blocking new marriage licenses for LGBTQ people, or they've already passed resolutions urging the Supreme Court to reverse Obergefell at the earliest opportunity. According to ABC News here, in June of this year, just a few months ago, the Southern Baptist Convention, the nation's largest Protestant Christian denomination, overwhelmingly voted to make overturning of laws and court rulings, including Obergefell versus Hodges, that defy God's design for marriage and family, a top priority. So again, we're not surprised that there is now this move to be able to overturn this decision. But let's get into the law, because that's really important here. The reason why you see Kim Davis make this move towards the Supreme Court is multifold. One, because she's a horrible person, and that's the most important kind of takeaway from just the humanity of this. But 2, here's an important point. We have seen an incredible shift under the Trump administration's, plural, having an incredibly conservative Supreme Court majority. And when you look at somebody like Clarence Thomas, who in 2022 overturned Dobbs, and in his concurrence, he wrote the following, quote, "As I've previously explained, substantive due process is an oxymoron that lacks any basis in the Constitution. The court today declines to disturb substantive due process jurisprudence generally or in the doctrine's application in other specific contexts." And then within his concurrence, Thomas brings up Griswold versus Connecticut, the right of married persons to obtain contraceptives, Lawrence versus Texas, the right to engage in private consensual sexual acts, and Obergefell versus Hodges, the right to same-sex marriage. But then he goes on to write, "For that reason, in future cases, we should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell, because any substantive due process decision is demonstrably erroneous. We have a duty to correct the error established in those precedents." Clarence Thomas has created the entry point for somebody like Kim Davis to make this petition. But as we've covered here at the Katie Phang News Channel, just because you make a petition to the United States Supreme Court doesn't mean that the United States Supreme Court is going to take up this decision or take up your case. And the reason why it's really important for us to focus on that here as well is because Kim Davis has made this attack on substantive due process every step of the way up until now, and every step of the way she's been rejected. That argument has been wholesale told to her that it's not right. And so the likelihood of the Supreme Court to take it is pretty slim, especially because the context of her appeal is her taking action as a state agent or acting in her capacity as a state agent. Remember, she was a clerk of courts. She wasn't acting in a private capacity when she denied these marriage licenses to a gay couple. So the Supreme Court's probably will not say, yes, we're going to take this up because we want to overturn same-sex marriage. I think I'm right. But with this Supreme Court, you never know. But these constant invitations that are being made, the attack on the LGBTQ communities by Trump and this administration, and now by the religious right, or not now, I guess always by the religious right, makes us hit the pause button about our lack of credulity that this could happen. Because if we thought that Roe was a huge shock, that it was overturned by Dobbs, then we haven't been paying attention. And the erosion of same-sex rights and the erosion of the rights of the LGBTQ communities, that is a huge red flag for us as Americans. Right now, there are an estimated 823,000 married same-sex couples in the United States, including 591,000 that wed after the Supreme Court's decision in Obergefell in June of 2015. And this is according to the Williams Institute at UCLA Law School. Nearly 1 in 5 of those married couples is parenting a child under the age of 18. These numbers are critically important for us, folks. And the reason why is you will now destroy. And by the way, there's a grandfathering in of couples that have already done it post Obergefell up until the point if the Supreme Court takes this decision and overturns Obergefell. But how are you dehumanizing and devaluing a same-sex couple, especially if you think about the fact that some of them at huge numbers, 1 in 5, is raising a child under the age of 18? Earlier this year, a federal appeals court panel told Kim Davis she cannot raise the First Amendment as a defense because she was held liable for her state action, her actions as a clerk of courts, which the First Amendment doesn't give you protection. Some legal scholars suggest, and this could be a possibility, that if the Supreme Court takes this case, that it does so to decide that perhaps there is religious liberty afforded to state actors, but I don't even think that works either, because that wholesale turns so many years of precedent on its head. But I always want to bring these cases and these issues to your attention because you're going to see a proliferation of them. You're going to see an uptick in these types of cases being pitched to the United States Supreme Court because the war on woke hasn't stopped just because we now have outrageous tariffs and because we now have Trump federalizing the DC police force and putting the National Guard in DC and his threats to do it in other cities like Baltimore, Chicago, etc. And we still have the war on woke by the Republicans and by the religious right and white Christian nationalists, even though we have still no disclosure of the Epstein files. When these legal issues percolate to the top and we have so much going on, I think it's important for me to share this information with you so you understand what's at stake. I need you to share this information far and wide. Take this video and share it far and wide. Let people understand, especially Republicans that are gay, that are in same-sex marriages. If they think that the Supreme Court's going to give a carve-out for them with their political affiliation, they're dead ass wrong. This is a war on decency. It's a war on humanity that is being waged by the Republicans and the religious right. We saw it being promised in Project 2025. We see the actual organized religions and denominations like the Baptist Church saying that they are going to be going after this and making it a priority. And we know that they have the ear of people like convicted felon Donald Trump, even though he is definitely on that Epstein list, right? The list that doesn't exist. We're going to keep an eye on whether or not the United States Supreme Court takes up Kim Davis's petition for writ of certiorari. And we're going to keep you informed because this is the most powerful way for us to create a high information America, is by sharing this information and letting you understand not only what the law is, but what's at stake. And apparently, the 14th Amendment substantive due process, according to Kim Davis, is wrong, but only if you're gay. For somebody like her who wants to be a bigot and who wants to not do the decent and right thing, she thinks it's fine. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.